Hello, my listeners. This is Tony of Widescreen Film Discussion Podcast, and we're going to start doing something. We're going to put up little short reviews, nothing hour long, not a full podcast, but we're going to record for you and play the occasional reviews of new releases, oldies but goodies we think you need to see. Just little short reviews, something for you to listen to and enjoy, hopefully turn you on and or off to certain movies out there. And the first one I'm flying solo for this. First one is Tomorrowland, new release that hit last Friday, Memorial Day weekend. Tomorrowland, starring George Clooney, and Tomorrowland is directed by Brad Bird. It is his second live-action film. His first one was the great Mission Impossible 4, and I thought that was a fantastic action movie. We'll probably be speaking of that in podcast somewhere down the road, but it was one that it was an action movie like action movies used to be, and I really enjoyed the fourth Mission Impossible. I'm a fan of the series, sans the second Mission Impossible, but the fourth Mission Impossible could be my favorite. And Brad Bird directed it. It was his first live-action movie after directing the wonderful animated film The Iron Giant and also The Incredibles, two really good animated films. And Ratatouille, a really good one. Not great, but really good. Fits perfectly in the Pixar universe. And Brad Bird's second directorial live-action film is Tomorrowland, and it is a film that tries to recapture the feel of, it's presented of course by Disney, and it tries to recapture the feel of the Disney films of the 60s and 70s that were geared towards children but weren't condescending. Most of them weren't condescending towards kids. They had elaborate plots and that kids could follow, and they all were filled with magic lands and little adventures kids and adults had to get through to get to these magic lands, be they in space or in another dimension or here on Earth, Lost City, and so forth. This movie, a teenager played by Britt Robertson, who she's playing 15, and she looks like she's in her late 20s, but whatever. The teenager played by Britt Robinson comes in contact with a little pen with a T on it. Stands for Tomorrowland, and every time she touches the pen, she's transported into the future, or so she thinks, or she might be. I'm not going to tell. And every time she touches it, she's transported into the future of Tomorrowland, this magical, Disney-esque, wondrous world, very futuristic. But the look of it, the design of it is 60s, 70s sci-fi futuristic. It's not all modernized. I mean, it's futuristic and modern, but it's got that old-fashioned future look, and I enjoyed that about it. But through some plot contrivances, she's led to team up with George Clooney, who is a now cynical recluse scientist. And he used to be a boy wonder. He was an inventor who invented a jetpack way back and was ignored because they felt the jetpack couldn't further, human endeavor. And even though it does later in the movie, and again, I won't spoil any plot points. And when they hook up, they go on an adventure to Tomorrowland to try to stop the end of the world, basically. And that's the basic premise. There's a lot of things that happen. There are kid robots. There's adult robots. I spoke on our sci-fi, which you'll probably actually hear this first before you hear the sci-fi podcast. But I spoke on the sci-fi podcast of the movie AI, Artificial Intelligence, directed by Steven Spielberg. It's a movie that I don't like, but I feel it's a movie of three parts. And in the first part, and I won't get into it, you can hear it on the Superhero podcast, but the first part is a very interesting sci-fi beginning. The middle part of AI is this absolutely ridiculous action bit that goes on way too long, at least a half hour, 45 minutes. And then the final part of AI is a talky snooze fest amidst all this CGI futuristic madness. And that's the way I feel about AI. And when I walked out of Tomorrowland, I realized that's the way I feel about Tomorrowland. In the beginning of the film, we see George Clooney as a little boy having his adventure, trying to get his jetpack into Tomorrowland and past their scientists, their board of directors of scientists who are trying to further, human endeavor, and they just say it's just a jetpack, it's not going to help anything. But of course he gets to use it and flies through Tomorrowland, and he meets a little girl robot that he takes a shine to. And it is about a half an hour sequence setting up the story that way. And I think it was magical, wonderful, a lot of fun, old-fashioned, and I had a great time. In the middle of the movie, the 15-year-old, played by the probably mid-20s Britt Robertson, it begins her adventure to go find George Clooney and try to get to Tomorrowland and try to solve the mystery of the pin that she touches, and that turns into a lot of action movie silliness with dumb action sequences and a really, really bad action sequence involving two owners of a sci-fi store. And I will get to some product placement that I was angered at in a moment. And then the third act, the final act, is, of course, I'm not giving any spoilers. We know they're going to make it to Tomorrowland. And for like 25 minutes, they're talking. Hugh Laurie, the great Hugh Laurie, and George Clooney, and Britt Robertson, the teenage mid-20s lady. They're all talking, and they talk, and they talk, and they talk, and they talk. And I'm thinking, I'm bored. I can't, and I could feel, we saw it in a packed theater. My son was with us. He was bored, and you can feel, you know how when you can feel around you the audience getting bored. You could feel the kids and hear them getting restless, and they totally lost them at the last half of that movie. But as I spoke of AI, Tomorrowland's the exact same feeling for me. Wonderful opening, really interesting, really fun, ridiculously special effects, action-driven middle that makes no sense at times and is silly and derivative, and then a completely boring wrap-up. And on the whole, I didn't like it. Do I hate it? No. Do I like it? No. I have a 5-star scale, and I give it 2.5. I couldn't imagine sitting through it again. I think it's a failed attempt at what the filmmaker was trying to do. George Clooney is fine. He's George Clooney. He's cynical George Clooney in this one. Britt Robinson. Robinson. I know I keep flip-flopping on her last name, but I just checked. It's Robertson. Britt Robertson playing the teenager. She's okay at best. Hugh Laurie's fine, playing a smarmy Hugh Laurie type. He's like a more subdued House. The movie just doesn't work. It doesn't end up working. I was so excited after the beginning of that movie. I just couldn't take it. And then I'm like, wow, this is really going to be something. And then it just flies into mediocrity, unfortunately. And I mentioned the product placement. Disney, as anyone who hasn't heard this, you must have been living on a rock, under a rock, or on a rock with no television or internet. But Disney acquired Lucasfilm, i.e. the Star Wars films and everything Lucasfilm entails, Indiana Jones, etc., etc. Unfortunately, that means they also got Howard the Duck. Sorry, guys. Nice job. But we have the new Star Wars film coming out at the end of this year, and probably the most anticipated film in modern movie history, I would guess, at least in this household. But Disney, they own Star Wars now, and there's a scene where the main character, the teenager played by Britt Robertson, goes into a sci-fi toy store, and there's a toy from there's a Tron toy, there's a toy from the Black Hole, there's a toy from Forbidden Planet, Robbie the Robot, one toy from each little sci-fi thing that we remember and love. And 1,000 toys from Star Wars. Every shot, every turn, every corner. There's Star Wars stuff everywhere. Mind you, I love Star Wars and I love Disney, but it was a brutal product placement. And, I could understand a Stormtrooper here, R2-D2 there, a poster in the background, a stuffed animal here. But it was everywhere. The place should have been a Star Wars toy store. It was ridiculous, and I didn't appreciate. I hate product placement, and that was a brutal one. And even though it was Star Wars, I'm like, no, that's too much. Just give us a subtle hint. Don't hit us over the head with it. We know you have Star Wars. We are ready. We will see you in December. We're already there. Excuse me. But that being said, the movie's not very good. It starts out fine, rapidly declines, and then bores you in the last half. And it's sad because it's a movie that wants to be this wondrous, magical adventure and play for kids in a time when we don't get enough movies that play for kids of all ages. And it doesn't work, and ends up not working. And that's too bad. I believe Brad Bird is a talented filmmaker. I love The Incredibles. I like Ratatouille. I like The Iron Giant a lot. And I love, as I stated, Mission Impossible 4. But this film is, I don't know, too many irons in the fire or pots in the pan. I don't know whatever the phrase is, but he starts out with a nice story and then tries to get too much going on and throws in too much and loses adults and children alike. I'm sure it did an okay opening, and I don't think it's going to do much business. I can't imagine good word of mouth or repeat viewings. But this is my review, our first solo review on the podcast. It's my review of Tomorrowland, and on my scale of 5 stars, I give it 2.5. I recommend you don't go see that. I recommend you do go see Mad Max Fury Road, the best film out there, and it will be one of the best movies of the year. If you want to take your children to something, you're kind of stuck because right now there's really nothing for them. But you can try Tomorrowland, but I'm telling you, about an hour in, they're going to be so bored, and they won't have the good time that you think they're going to have after the first half of the movie. All right, this is Tony, and my head is still full of wonder and magic. Tomorrowland can't kill it, because I know that out there somewhere is a magical world of fun and love and happiness, and I see it every time I drink too many White Russians. Okay, folks, Tomorrowland, 2.5 stars out of 5. This is Tony, signing off.